contract we're entering into today is the only contract that it's justifiable to enter into, to help each other become conscious. Or, to put it more even straighter, we are each entering into a contract to get straight or become conscious ourselves through the use of group process. That's the only really way we can say it. That if you think you can become more conscious by another means other than being with other people, do it. There is a stage in one's process of consciousness evolution where satsang or sangha, that is, hanging out with other people who are on the path, is useful. And then there are other parts of the journey where they're completely irrelevant. There's some machine, every time I go, it goes... Sounds like I'm whispering to myself inside. We are following at this moment the upaya, the method of using our senses to go beyond our senses. We're using a tantric method. That is, we're using each other in form in order to transcend each otherness in form. Because everything that's in my head that you now think is not in your head, but will be by the end of the day, were you conscious, you would realize is already in your head. So you are in an illusion now, I am in an illusion, that this is a process, and we are trying to use the illusion to transcend the illusion. And when you can bring your mind to one pointedness such that when I gave you that instruction for 3 minutes, think of nothing but one form, and you're able to do that without any elaboration, without any other thoughts, and so on, then you are ready to go through a doorway because you have developed the instrument you need to do it, which is the instrument of one-pointedness of mind. There are a number of Western models of how things happen that we are all somewhat stuck in, which is that there is something to do, is the first one. We've got to do something. A person comes and says, I'm confused, what should I do? Note, he is not too confused to ask, what should I do? which is a program he has in his head. If he were totally confused, he'd be free, but he isn't. He isn't confused enough. And I say to him, it doesn't matter what you do. And this is irritating to him. He thinks he's asked the question wrong, and that if he asked it right, I'd really tell him what to do. And he says, well, shall I meditate, or should I just go out and, make love and eat pizzas? And I said, doesn't matter. He says, should I eat meat, or should I? Doesn't matter. Should I hang out around beautiful people, or should I? Doesn't matter. Now here, I don't eat meat. I hang out around beautiful people. I'm working on my consciousness full time, and I'm saying to him, it doesn't matter. Now, how could that be possible? Am I just lying? Does it matter to me? A guy came up to me the other night, and he said at a meeting in Tufts, and he says, would you mind if I took a razor and cut off your beard? And I said, yes. So it's my game uniform. I said, if you came up to me and held me down and cut off my beard, it wouldn't matter to me. That would be the way it is. Now I don't have a beard. See, the reason I do everything I do is because I do everything I do. There are choices being made every minute of the day, but the question is, who is making the choices? And the answer is that I'm not making the choices. The choices are happening. It's not my, but thy will. The reason I say to people it doesn't matter is because to the extent that they're asking the question, what do I do? They're already asking something, and therefore the process is so clearly in operation that it's not like they can stop asking the question. They can stop for a minute or more, but they can't stop. And it turns out that once you start to ask a question, once you start to see through the illusion, once you start to realize that there is a state of being conscious, or in Gurdjieffian terms, a higher faculty, or different degrees of enlightenment, or objective consciousness, or whatever metaphor you want to use, the spirit. Once you realize that, then everything else becomes part of the process of coming to that. And in fact, even before you realize that, everything in life was part of the process of coming to that anyway, except that you weren't aware that that's what it was you were doing. When you make love, it's to come to the light. When you work to be successful, it's to have a certain feeling of bliss, which is very light. When you do any act which you previously said, well, I'm doing that for selfish motives, that is still coming to the light. And when you begin to see that selfish motives is a cop-out to label them thus, it's all selfish motives. But the social responsible link that is obvious immediately the minute you start to become conscious is that you can do nothing for another human being but work on yourself, and that as you work on yourself, you get to a state almost immediately where you see that every other human being is yourself, and therefore whatever you are doing, you are working on yourself, and you further see that until everybody makes it, nobody makes it, because everybody is one. It's just a sequence of thoughts you go through as you start to meditate. And then the whole hype of am I doing it for me or doing it for you becomes totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. It's very easy to carry into yoga a whole model of good and evil. You know, oh, I ate well today. Oh, I didn't eat well today. I didn't eat yoga-like today. I kept a diary and I had 4 lustful thoughts. Maybe tomorrow I can have 3. We just start to go back into our trip of collecting and measuring and evaluating and doing, which is our Western journey. Just another place to hide, another illusion. So even though today we're going to be discussing Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, and I'm going to go systematically through the steps of it and how it's done and why you do it and the whole business, at least what's coming through here. To the extent that you still are in the model that it is that you collect something which you then use, it is not of any use to you. Because these methods only work when they really don't work as objects. It's like doing mantra. The way one does mantra when mantra works is that mantra does one doesn't do mantra. You tune in on the mantra. Mantra just is happening. You just focus. It's like tuning your radio dial in on the mantra. You don't say, I'll do mantra, even though you pick up beads and start to do mantra. Business of what you label, what part of the figure and ground you label. See, I can talk about diet and I can discuss the relationship of what you eat to what kind of consciousness you can reach under certain conditions until you're a fully realized being. And you can go home and say, well, therefore I will eat thus and so. And then spend great amounts of time wishing you were eating something else. Under these conditions, you are creating as much new karma about food as if you were eating something else, practically. Not quite, but practically. The basic rule is to be here now. The rule is to start from exactly where we are at this moment. The rule is to be able to say about oneself and the universe, with all of its horror, with all of its beauty, with all of its imperfections, Kali in all her manifestations, it's all right. It's all okay. Murder, rape, overpopulation, pollution, riots, fascistic doctrine, suppression of other human beings, starvation. Birth, death, spring and fall and winter. It's all right. It's all right. It's all the way it's supposed to be. It's all the way it's supposed to be. How could that be? That I am this imperfect, impure being who's got all these desires and all these neuroses and all these frustrations, and this is just the way it's supposed to be? Aren't I supposed to work for something? Aren't I supposed to keep a model in my head of what is pure and what is right and what is good and how it should be? How my body should be, how my thoughts should be, how the world should be, how people should be? Every one of those models you keep in your head keeps it from happening. Water, when it floats downstream, when it goes down the stream, doesn't have a model of what it's doing. It's just being water, and water floats downstream because that's the way water works. The thing that is extraordinarily hard for any of us to truly realize and to have sufficient faith to accept is that if you stop having views, if you stop having models, if you stop planning, if you stop desiring, organizing, structuring, it's all right. But that means all the way back in, you got to stop doing it at every level, even the primordial levels. Freud talks about the unconscious. And he says, behind all the things you think are what it is you're doing and you think you're doing and why you think you're doing it, there are a whole set of other motives and desires of what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you think you're doing. All just one level down in. And it's defended against, so you don't know about it. And then Jung comes along and he says, behind even those, the individual unconscious, there is a collective unconscious. That is, you're part of a whole process of evolution in which all of those desires are part of you too. And all of those unfulfilled karmic things are happening and being lived out. And all those thought forms exist in you too. And for many years we say, well, Jung is right, and if Jung is right, then we must keep careful control on the game, because if we let that next level come out, it's all going to be hell for everybody. And all the way along, mystics are touching a place inside themselves which is behind Freud and behind Jung and behind Adler and behind all of the models of how it is, and they touch a place and they say, it's all right. But if you're going to run Earth Week, and somebody comes up to you and says, it's all right, you don't want to hear that. Because the justification for your action is based on the fact that it's not all right. It's not all right, but there's something to do. And there's nothing that a person wants less than to have the justification for his own actions pulled away from him. My father spent years earning money to be secure, and now he's secure, and now he spends years earning money to be secure. And I say to him, but you're already secure. But you don't say that, because that he can't hear that, because he doesn't want to make that change, because then what would be the reason for what he's doing, or what would be the reason for his life? When I was at college, I had a roommate who was very poor. He was an orphan, and he was studying to be a doctor, and his whole life was dedicated to becoming a doctor and to marrying the girl that he had, his cousin, and to becoming secure. And he spent ever since we went to college doing just that, and he's done it. He's got 3 children. He's the head of psychiatric research at the Boston State Hospital or something like that. Very reputable, good person. Now, when I was at college, we were roommates, except that I had a lot of money. I didn't have it, but I knew my father had it. I knew he wasn't going to let me starve to death. And in a way, my roommate's justification for life wasn't available to me. And I felt like the poor little rich boy. I felt gypped. It seemed like he had such an easy trip ahead of him. While every day I had to figure out what am I going to do and why am I going to do it? Because I couldn't justify it like my father had or like this roommate had. I couldn't say, well, I've got to do it in order to. And I was constantly looking for new justifications. But because of that predicament, I was realizing that I was imposing all the justifications. He could hide in the fact that justification had been cast upon him, while I felt that I had to make up a justification. And therefore, everyone was just another made-up justification. So in a way, I was blessed, it turned out, in that I was given the opportunity to see that my desires created my universe much more readily than he was. Because he kept saying, look, it's reality. That's the way it is. While I had to say, that's the way I'm making it. And that, of course, is the understanding that finally comes to you. That your desires keep creating your universe. Your desires keep creating your universe. And the only reason you aren't at this moment a fully enlightened being is because of your desires, because of your attachments. Including, by the way, your attachment to knowing, or your attachment to becoming an enlightened being. You don't stop your desires as long as you stay in a human body. All you do is to break the identification with them. That's all that's required. It's not necessary to give up anything. It's merely necessary to give up attachment to the thing. That's all that's required. It isn't necessary for the guy that's leading Earth Week not to lead Earth Week. If it is his thing to lead Earth Week, he should lead Earth Week, and he should lead it consciously and beautifully. But if he is attached to leading Earth Week, how poignant. During the day, we'll be talking about the words like attachment, involvement, commitment. All in the context of yoga, which means a method of union. Yoga means union, just union. And the Bodhisattva role, which is the role of total involvement and service with one's fellow man, can only be realized when one has experienced yoga or union. As long as you identify only with being separate from other beings, your service to other beings only increases the illusion of separateness. The Bodhisattva lives in the two places at once. He has gone into the void, into the emptiness, into the place beyond form. He has seen, yes, it all is eternally. Behind wars, behind dying, behind being born, behind all form, in all form, through all form, he sees, he is, he tastes of eternal now. And then, after residing there, for as long as he resides there, he comes back into form. But at the same time, he never leaves the eternal present. So that from then on, he lives simultaneously with two awarenesses. Although he is not intellectualizing about these two, every act is based on those two things known simultaneously. There is nothing, there is no you, there is no me, and at the same moment there is you and there is me. There is no form, there is form. That all dualities are in fact one. And that at the same moment there's the one, there is the many. The Mahamudra, the paradox of the two in one. You've got to be at the place where it all, you're doing, look at me, I'm doing full time. And yet I know I'm not doing anything, and there's nobody doing anything. Sometimes one of them gets the dominant until you're finished. One of them can become dominant, or another one can become dominant. At one point, the idea that I'm not doing anything becomes dominant, and I get out in front of like 1,000 people, and I sit down, and I got nothing to say, and there's no them, and there's no me, and there's no reason to be here. And then I think, uh-oh, too far over in the void. See? Too far, meaning I can't keep it all together. The game finally is to keep it all together as it keeps happening. Like one day you've got a wife and children, and then the next day you suddenly see your God, their God, they always were, they always will be. Who's got wives and children? The hell with it. I've got to go help the world. That's not keeping it together. Because at one level you have a wife and children. And the denial of any level to live at another level is merely another kind of psychosis than the one you're in now. Or another kind of illusion. You can just trade illusions. I'll give you my illusion for your illusion. We'll cure you, meaning we'll bring you back into our illusion. Now, all this is in a way to just to formulate for ourselves what itch it is we're scratching. Because one of the real habits we all have is to collect information for which we have no apparent use, saying it will be useful later. That was what all of education seemed to be designed around. You say, but I don't want to learn how to factor and analyze. Well, you'll need it later. You'll be happy later you learn Latin. But there's nobody to speak Latin with. Well, you wait. Later on, it'll all be good. You'll find the roots and derivations of the word. It will be very useful to know Latin. And somewhere along the line, you almost buy that. You don't quite, but you almost buy it. If you really bought it, there wouldn't be an 87% forgetting curve in 24 hours after exams. That's because you don't really buy it. But you do it. You try to do it. Because you have no itch to scratch at that moment. See, education only happens, really, in one trial learning. It only happens when you are so open to something because you want to know it so badly that you become one with it. You just sop it up just like how you're really thirsty on a very hot day after a long something or other. You don't have to have many reinforced trials to know you're enjoying the water or you want to absorb it into yourself. You just can't get it in fast enough. Well, that's the same way with how you learn something when you really want to know it. And so we can play the game of education of, isn't that interesting? I really want to know that. But you're not wanting to know it like you want that water. And the result is you collect it and you sort of put it away on the shelf and use a little of it now and a little of it then because you've still got a game going that you really want to continue playing. And because most of us are dominant in our intellectual center in the West, we collect symbols and store them for later use, like hamsters collect grain or, we just collect. I'd have hamsters, and they'd keep collecting and collecting until they had huge mountains of food. I just kept figuring I'll give them as much food as they want to collect. And they just, internally, you just kept going and collecting. Now, I'm going to talk about Ashtanga Yoga. I'm just going to suggest you let the whole thing wash over you. Wash over you. And that which you're ready for will go through the sieve and you'll have it. You don't have to collect it. It'll be there. Something you're really ready to hear that I say, you will have heard the minute I say it, and you'll say, yeah, of course, that's right. And all it'll do is bring it into form for you, and that'll be done. And if anything I say, you say, I wonder if that's true or not. Forget it. Because it'll come up later. You don't have to worry now. Because anything you're ready to use, you now know. And all I can, in the course of my speaking or any other experience you have in the environment, is it will reinforce the fact you already know it. There's an interesting phenomenon that occurs as you work into different states of consciousness. That as you come into each new frequency of vibration or each new level of consciousness, you experience extraordinarily increased amounts of energy. Now, often you can't use this energy because you're not open to use it. And therefore what you experience is a fantastic amount of tension build up. And the feeling I've got to do something, tension created. In the chakra system, that is because you don't have any vehicles for expression in any chakra above your third chakra. And there's too much energy to be expressed that way.
What is third chakra?
I'm going to tell you. Good. Okay. if you can just think now, and this is all, you can use it as a metaphor, you can use it at any level you want to use it. Think of seven energy centers all in a row, ascending row, from 1 at the bottom to 7 at the top. Muladhara, Svadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, Ajna, Sahaswara are the Sanskrit words. Now imagine that each of these levels defines a way in which energy can come into the system and a way in which energy can go out of the system. Right? And everything below the number 4, 3 and down, energy can only come into the system through the gross body, through food, etc., like that. Now, taking these 7 steps, now think of this as the thing that goes through the 7 as a river. Okay? And you're going to travel up this river. This river is called the Sushumna. The first place you come to on this river, called the first chakra, is, think of it as being in the middle of a very wild wilderness in Africa, where there are wild animals, and you're into a survival concern. Your primary thing is to get roots and nuts and fruit and not be killed by tigers, and right? So that your total preoccupation at that point is with survival of you as a separate entity. Right? It's very much like an ape is like that.
Survival of your body.
Survival of your body. Survival of you as an individual, separate entity in form. And all the energy that you is used to, right, keep you surviving as a separate entity. That's number 1. Now let's say you get that all cooled out and you start to travel up this river. The next city you come to is like the Riviera. You still take energy in through all like this, but now you got the survival bit cooled out, and now you're part of a species that reproduces, and you start to experience desire for sexual desire. And so the second chakra is sort of sensual gratification, the gratification of experiencing and feeling and gratifying oneself. Still, I am me separate. I can survive. Now I'll enjoy. Okay? Enjoy is the second chakra term. If you go up the river a little further, you come to a combination of Wall Street and Washington and London, which is a third chakra type place, which is primarily concerned with ego mastery, control, power. It's extensions of the self. It's no longer for survival, and it's no longer for sex. It's merely for enhancement of a symbolic self. So you may perform sexual acts for power. In other words, you may now perform a sexual act in the service of the third chakra. Or you may be a businessman who's collecting power for second chakra reason, because he's doing it as a sexual potency thing. And when he buys a new huge business, he has like an orgasm of gratification, of, ooh, wasn't that good? Now, those first 3 cities include about 99% of the population. And the river gets very narrow and it changes its tone completely. They got huge steamships and jets doing the first 3. See? But the minute you start up that 4th one, it's like a rowboat, and very primitive type rowboat. And there are big signs between 3 and 4 saying, "Turn back here." See, we have what you want back at, the Hilton Inn and the Bunny Club and the. Don't be socially irresponsible. Go no further. Do good. You will feel good if you do good. 3rd chakra. Or before you go on, eat this. That's a good one. Or have you yet experienced Hidden Valley in southern Wyoming at 2 in the morning? But for some reason or other, some people see through the whole thing of the first 3 chakras. They see the kind of finiteness of the whole trip. They see that it isn't doing it. And they start up the 4th to the 4th chakra. Now, up until through the 3rd chakra, all the energy that can come out of the system only comes out through ego trips, through keeping yourself as separate. I am a finite point in time and space. First, I am protecting that finite time and point of space from you. Second, I'm going to make it with you to gratify this finite time and point in time and space. And the third one, I am going to control and master you because I'm going to enhance my ego by doing that. And since all of the energy, therefore, can only come out in ego manifestations of me, I will do this, I think this, my will, what I want to do. If you try, it's like the huge telephone wires that carry wires from the generating plant. There are step-down transformers and step-down transformers and step-down transformers till you finally get it into the house where you may bring it in 220 or even in 110 voltage. And at that point, that 110 is just about enough for your toaster. And if you try to feed 220, you'll burn out your toaster. Right? Well, that's the thing about ego situations. Each ego, you burn the ego out if you try to feed too much energy through it. Because each ego is like each homeowner. He can only handle the energy at such and such a level. Now, what happens to many, many people through many reasons, like they go to the Fillmore, or they go to a huge dance scene, or they go to some high energy thing like Woodstock, and they absorb through what you call a contact high. They absorb fantastic amounts of energy. It comes in a new way for them. It just comes into them. They don't eat it. It just, all their senses are information sent in through all their senses, because the first three not only allow it to come in through food, but through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. We say we get a high off, boy, look at that view. Doesn't that get you high? Or listen to that sound. Doesn't that turn you on? And so at a place like Woodstock or something like that, you overload the circuits. You feed everything in all at once. See? And there's huge amount of energy. People start to tune in on vast amounts of energy. They start to go behind the step-down transformer in terms of the amount of energy that's put in. But their responses that are available to them are often just the old responses, because that's all they know what to do about it. So they try to do it more and more. So you try to make love more and more and more and more. Or you try to collect more and more power, or change the world for good. Use your power. See, you get all this power and you got to do something about it. You keep you eat and eat and eat until you practically explode, or you begin to see that eating is just going to go on and it's finite, whatever it is. And when a certain set of prerequisites have been fulfilled, which come under the term, the word virag, meaning an end of worldliness, meaning an end of realizing that anything you're going to get in the first, second, and third chakra is really going to be enough, and that you can't use all the energy you got through those systems. You experience a despair, and then you, even though that little river gets very narrow and very absurd, it's the only thing to do. You don't do it because you're a courageous adventurer, setting out from the city and goodbye, everybody, I'll see you later, and have a good trip and report back. You don't do it for that motive at all, because it's a drag. I mean, there's mosquitoes and, it's a whole draggy system compared to how groovy it can be back in the Riviera in New York or London. You do it because you begin to see the finiteness of every trip up until then, and there's nothing else to do but do it. It's the only thing you can do. Like, as long as you travel in a foreign country, thinking I am traveling in a foreign country, you're a tourist, and it can't happen to you, because you're collecting photographs, tapes, and stuff which you're wearing like a coat, but it's not being absorbed because you're holding on to this core identity. And the ability to surrender into a new experience, to become one with it, to merge with it, then the thing happens to you. And as long as I am somebody from London who is traveling up that river, forget it. I'm not going to make it up that river. The only way I can make it up the river is when I've given up being somebody from London, and now all I am is somebody traveling up that river, because that's the only way I can be conscious enough to see how it all is at each new stage. When you get to the fourth chakra, the anahata, in the Indian system, if you look at books, old Indian Hindu books, you'll see that the fourth through the seventh chakra is always lit by red beams that come from an om that's up in a corner in a circle like a sun, and beams are coming down to the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh chakra, and then there's sort of a line, and then there's a grayish place in which 1, 2, and 3 are. And the fourth chakra is the chakra of compassion. It's the chakra of grok, for those of you that are familiar with that metaphor. It's the chakra of realizing guts-wise the brotherhood of man. It's the chakra of realizing the unitive nature of things. It's the chakra of going beyond. It's like it's Jung's chakra, really, see, because Jung was a compassionate being, and Jung, see, when you go into Jung's collective unconscious, you begin to see, just as if you go into astrology, you begin to see who you are one level back. You begin to see that you're really an Aries, just doing Aries things, or you're really a Scorpio doing Scorpio things, or that you're really part of a dominant archetype, and you're just living out your archetypal thing. You're living out your legend, if you will, and all the stuff you thought was who you were is merely sort of second-order manifestation of that, and who you are is somebody behind that, right? Now, the minute you've done that, you have freed yourself from the original identification of who you are. In other words, you're getting perspective by going up one level of who you are. So, like Tim used to say to me, my old partner, Tim Leary, used to say, dig your own legend. Now, he wasn't saying it as a big ego trip, like, enjoy your own legend, be legendary. He was saying, get out of your own predicament. You know, if you're going to be the Jewish mother, dig that you're being the Jewish mother. Don't sit around saying, well, I've got to take care of you. I've got to cook and I've got to sew and I've got to, you know. I mean, do the Jewish mother trip exquisitely because you're conscious you are doing essence Jewish motherness. Whatever your legendary role or roles are, dig them so that you get free of getting identified with a specific instance of the set, the subset in the set, okay? To mix metaphors further. If you miss a metaphor, don't let it disturb you. There's 10,000 more coming up. They all say the same thing. Buddha taught for 49 years and nothing was said. Okay, so don't get frustrated. The quality of the fourth chakra is that you can break the reality boundaries you were in by talking about a limited reality as if it were absolute. And you start to get into the world of relative reality. That is, you see that there are all other realities, and you can start to look at your own life in thousands of ways. You can see yourself as woman, you can see yourself as American, you can see yourself as a religion, you can see yourself as a race, you can see yourself as a humanoid thing, you can see yourself as a biological entity, you can see yourself as an electrical chemical thing, you can see yourself as protoplasmic stuff, you can see yourself as energy transmission, you can see yourself, and it's like baklava. You look at it all and it's just layer after layer after layer after layer, and you, oh yeah, right, of course that too, that too, that too, that too, that too. Now, what many people do is they make a quick foray into the fourth chakra and then rush back to the third and then sell what they found. It's a very seductive possibility. Or they sell it in the second even. I mean, they sell it wherever there's a market for it. That'll give them the highest ego flash they can get. And there are many yogis who use their yogic powers in order to gain individual power. And there are many people in the Western world who use their siddhis, their powers, their spiritual powers for personal gain. Because the rational mind is a siddhi, it is a power. And you can use the power either to increase your own individual power, or you can use it to increase the consciousness of it all by turning it back inward, not using the power. The key to that whole business is not my, but thy will. That's the key of submitting all of your powers, putting them in service of a process rather than stopping and taking your gains and saying, all right, I'll use them. I'll use them. See, the fourth chakra is the first chakra where one doesn't experience the feeling of separateness anymore. And waves, it's associated with waves of bliss, internal bliss. Waves of feeling of well-being. Waves of feeling of, oh yeah, that's just the way it's supposed to be. Waves of love. Waves of togetherness, of unitive feeling, of that moment of, oh, Yeah, here we are, that place. But most everybody has been on a very lean diet of that kind of stuff. And there are no habits of thought that allow you to be that person all the time. So you assume that you're just sort of going to take it and run, grab as much as you can. See? I'm going to get high next weekend, man, because I want to collect high. See? I want to collect high, since you're still defining yourself in third or second chakra or first chakra. And that's still starting to try to feed 220 through 110 system. Now, when you see that predicament, then you start to reorganize all of your habits of thought in order to define yourself now as a fourth chakra being. Okay? Like the first time you walk up to somebody and you say, I am love. Okay? Now, it is true that if you've got to say I am love, you're not. We all know that. But you're just experimenting with a new model of who you are. They say, how do you do? My name is Dave Brown. You say, how do you do? I'm love. Okay? I am God. I am pure spirit. I am part of all of us. They say, oh, yeah, I know, but who are you? And then you immediately go back into the thing that you really thought, well, really, I'm Dick Alpert. What do you do? Or I'm doing what I'm Ram Dass. So every time you experience that feeling of unity, then all of the personal time, space, desires, and attachments are no longer relevant at that moment. It's like if my body needs something, it all gets taken care of one way or another, but I don't sit around desiring, because I've now identified with a much broader kind of phenomenal field, if you will, who I am. I am the universe. Only under those conditions can you use higher energy, because then you aren't using the energy. Then there's no blockage, there's no tension, there's no feeling I got to do something, because there's no you to do it anymore. Fifth chakra is the chakra that is connected with Ramakrishna, is the one that we most associated with. It's a tremendous pull towards God. It's a tremendous pull towards turning inward and upward. It's Ramakrishna characteristically talked. Most of the Ramakrishna stories are fourth and fifth intertwining. He would go from loving the Divine Mother in all her forms, which is compassion, fourth chakra, to turning inward to go into that which was behind the Divine Mother inside, higher, into merging with one. And sometimes I've told about how he'd say, get me tobacco, and they'd say, but you don't smoke. He'd say, well, I got to want something, or I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave my body. I got to have something to hold me down. I got to have a desire to keep me in the fourth chakra, or to keep me down into a body, which is even below that. And when you see people who are called God intoxicants or masts in India, these are people who are in the fifth chakra. They're concerned for their body. They're concerned for everything has fallen away. They're still on the journey into oneness, but they are at a stage on the river where all the mail that comes gets sent back saying dead letter office. A letter from London never gets there to the fifth chakra. And Ramana Maharshi, for example, becomes enlightened at 17, and then he goes off to the mountain Arunachala, and he sits in a cave, and kids are throwing rocks and feces and everything at him, and he's just like completely oblivious to it all. And then somebody comes along and they see this very high being, and they carry him to another place, and they try to feed him like a couple of grains of rice a day and pour milk in, and nothing's happening. He's just completely out of it. because he's in the fifth chakra. In our categorization, we often call these people catatonic schizophrenics. We got to be careful because some of them are catatonic schizophrenics in the old terms, and some of them are these God intoxicants. But we don't have any discrimination in our system at all. So they're all put in total care institutions, which is a groovy place to keep them while they're doing their work. Then there is the possibility of sixth chakra, which is the ajna. The fifth chakra is right down here in the throat. The sixth chakra is right here between the eyebrows. It's when thine eye becomes single, you will see it all. That's the sixth chakra, the single eye. And it's the eye of wisdom. It's the point of causal plane. It's the point when you're in the sixth chakra, when you've traveled up that far, you understand and know and are wise about all of the laws of the universe. You see how it all works. You are the Godhead at that point. You are the mind that creates all the laws of the universe. You are one with it all. You see just how it is, but you're still busy seeing how it all is. Okay, there's still a separateness, And it's only when you go into the seventh chakra, the thousand-petal lotus, that you come into total merging back into what's called the Param Brahma, or back into that which is behind all form. Those are the seven systems, 7 levels. You can do any system, you can do any yoga at any one of the levels. I see people do hatha yoga, work on their bodies, and I see them do it for sexual gratification or sensual gratification because it feels so good to do hatha yoga. Feels so good to be able to do these far out things with their body. I see them do it for third chakra because they get mastery and power and control over the environment, and they develop powers. I see them do it in fourth chakra as an act of compassionate service, keeping the temple going, to keep themselves as high as possible, to serve, not in the ego sense, just serve. A person in the fifth chakra, were he doing hatha yoga, wouldn't know he was doing hatha yoga. It would just be hatha yoga was being done, like going to the toilet was being done. And so on up, it's irrelevant. Now that's to say to you that every part of the yoga that I describe, of which we're really talking about it now, every part of the yoga that I describe, you can do at many, many, many levels. Take bhakti, singing love songs to God. You can do bhakti, or you can do that kind of thing. See? And you can say, wow, isn't that groovy sound? Let's all sing together, like sing along with Mitch type thing. You can do it as a kind of a collective, emotional, fun experience. You can do it as a pure exercise in one-pointedness at a much higher level. By Ram, 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 and then you go right out through Ram. You can do it at a third chakra thing to say, look how good I am, I'm singing, love songs to God. Now, who we are in the West is all these levels all at once. Freud describes us as second chakra people. Adler describes us as third chakra people. Jung describes us as fourth chakra people. Teilhard de Chardin, people like that start to describe us in sixth chakra terms. The Egyptians describe us in sixth chakra terms. Most of us are functioning at many of these levels. We have moments of fourth chakra, we have dominant third or dominant second, we have moments of sixth, and our job, as we see it, we are in an evolutionary process of slowly moving up the spine, moving up these chakras, so that more and more of the energy and habits and whole way of life get localized in one chakra rather than another. That is, you do the survival thing till you got survival in order. You do the sex thing until you got the sex thing in harmony. You do the power thing till you got the power thing in harmony. You do compassion until that's in harmony. And you just keep moving through center after center after center and building models of who you are in terms of each of these new levels. Like Golding's Lord of the Flies is a beautiful example of when the kids are left alone, they go back into first chakra. Straight first chakra story. Now, if they all go through pubescence, then it'll become a straight second chakra story. Not because they, just because they're now, something's happened inside of them and they're ready for the second chakra. Then they build an organized structure, an environment, an organization, and then they elect a president, and then pretty soon they're in a third chakra trip. And then when they use up worldliness, they start to be interested in fourth chakra. And so you can see man is just an unfolding process of these chakras. And the chakras are right inside your own body. Your tuning device are your own chakras. So that as you tune in to each new chakra in your body, you tune in to a whole new universe, a whole new level of perceiving how it all is. It's like you take sex, take the sexual act. The sexual act can be done by a second chakra person, as it most often is, in which I lust for you, you are object, I make it with you, and through that vehicle I get gratification, and one of the gratifications is the great wave of bliss that comes at the moment of orgasm. But you notice, except for at the moment of orgasm, the entire method is based on duality. It's based on the idea that I'm separate and you're separate, and we're doing it for our mutual pleasure. But we're still separate beings. Now, what would it mean for fourth chakra people to make love? How would they do it? What would it be about? Who do you make love with? If everybody's the same person, who are you making love with? Does it mean that making love becomes an anachronism? I mean, is it all used up? Don't people make love? Well, the first thing that you've got to see and to try to feel your way into is that the experience, the highest experience you make love in order to reach is where you live when you are in the fourth chakra. Okay? In other words, if you just drank your fill and then somebody comes along and says, how would you like a nice cold glass of water? The process of drinking the water doesn't do anything to you any longer because you already are the water. You've done what you need to do. It's already here. So then, if you already are experiencing the goal of what the means was, why would you do the means anymore? The means takes on a new significance at that point. That's where Gandhi says, at the point of the real concept meaning of brahmachari, which is what I am, is not that I am sexually continent. It just means that I can have sex when I can have it in the fourth chakra. But then the question is, why would I have sex? And the answer is, I would have sex in order to reproduce children. Because I wouldn't be having it for gratification, since I already have the gratification I'd be having sex in order to get. See, I used to think about these yogis that would sit up in the mountains all by themselves all day, and I think these poor cats, man, they don't really dig how beautiful it all can be if they make it and have a home and hearth and, the whole scene. Till I began to realize that as individuals, they were experiencing exactly that same thing that everybody was trying to collect all the time. Except they had figured out that the thing they were trying to collect was something they already are, and they learned how to be it, and then they were just sitting being it. Well, now, does that mean that everybody, the minute they get to the fourth chakra, just sits on a mountaintop? And what happens to the world, and what happens to population, and do people produce, and why do they, and so on? If you sit down with your beloved, with your partner, with your Shakti, with your Shiva, with the yin and yang of it, and the two of you recognize the place in you where there is only one of you, and simultaneously acknowledge the place where there are two of you, then the act of making love is at the same moment an act of working from within oneself, and simultaneously it's an experience between two people. So when you sit down opposite your partner, cross-legged, and look directly into their eyes, and what you see is a face, and the face looks desirable to you, that's duality. And you look, and your face simultaneously is looking desirable to the other person. I can tell you that. And then you say, yes, and that one too. And then you just keep looking directly in their eyes, and then the face changes again. And then you see somebody that's very repugnant to you. And they see somebody that's very repugnant to them. And you say, yeah, and that one too. And then you see somebody that is childlike. I've told this story before. It may be helpful to see what I'm talking about taking LSD with Ronnie Lang in London. And he's a psychiatrist. And Ronnie and I took LSD, and then Ronnie came over to me, and he looked at me when we got high. He looked at me as if he were an old, wise, kind, good, protective father. And the minute I saw him looking that way, I felt like a defenseless little child, just embraced by his protectiveness. And the minute I had let myself totally into that one, his face changed, and he became the most defenseless little child. And when I saw this poor, pathetic, defenseless little child, out of me came this fantastic feeling of protective, old, wise, kind father. And the minute I had just gotten comfortable in that role, I'll take care of you, Ronnie. It's okay. I know what it must be like for you. His face changed again. And he was a fellow adventurer on a great journey. And into my face came the feeling of, wow, we're really journeying together. Did you see what we just did? See? Isn't this an exciting journey? And here we were having an exciting, all silently, all in meme, all in faces and bodies. And on and on and on we went for 4 or 5, 6 hours, just going through role change after role change after role change. And that one too. And that one too. The executioner and the condemned. Son and father, child and mother, teacher and student, guru and chela, lover and beloved. Wow, scary, scary, scary one. And be able to say in each case, yes, and that one too. Right, and that one too. Until you go through role after role after role after role, until the face ceases to be form, because you finished with each of the roles that was taking form. Because you begin to see, since the person's face is changing before your very eyes, that your desires, your model, your thought form is taking that matter and putting it into form. And be able to say in each case, yes, and that one too. Right, and that one too. Until you go through role after role after role after role, until the face ceases to be form, because you finished with each of the roles that was taking form. Because you begin to see, since the person's face is changing before your very eyes, that your desires, your model, your thought form is taking that matter and putting it into form. You know how when your moods change, the entire world changes. You create it differently. And finally you see behind all that, and you just see the eyes of the other person, just the eyes, and here we are, just eyes. Just here. And we see that you and I are involved in infinite variety of roles all the time. And those are the vehicles through which we speak. But we speak only to ourselves. We speak only to ourselves. Now, at that moment, then the act of lovemaking, what does it mean and how does it work then? Then it becomes a physiological dance of two parts of form, experienced by a single consciousness. And then it becomes like mudra. Mudras are statements made with form, like this is a mudra of prayer. That's a mudra. That's a mudra. It's a mudra. It's a mudra. Your body is always making a statement. It's always making a statement. Each of you at this moment, your body is making a statement. Most of these statements, most of us are unconscious of most of the time. We just think we're keeping our body around, keeping it comfortable. But in fact, it's making statements. And when you start to bring all of your being into consciousness at every level, your body statement becomes part of the whole process. And it's completely consciously done, the way you move. And you watch a conscious being move and you notice there's no effort that isn't, it's as if every movement is an act of the highest art and the highest beauty. Because each statement is absolutely perfectly conscious. And each one is the optimum place to be at that moment. So you get a feeling when you watch a conscious being move that you are watching something like a tree sway. You're watching a harmonious act, an act that's harmonious. And then you begin to see that that body movement, just like a work of art or a piece of music or anything else, in its purest sense, in the fourth chakra sense or above, is merely a statement of truth. It's a statement of God. In other words, you're doing it in its sacred rather than its profane form. You're doing it as a statement of truth. And that means that's what's called a consecrated act. It's a consecrated act. And so then lovemaking becomes a consecrated act. Because there is one consciousness which is higher than each of you separately that is performing this act with the two bodies, which is an act, a statement of truth. Statement of truth. And then it's just not making love, but it's eating, and it's toileting, and it's walking, and it's driving, and it's meeting everybody you ever meet. When you meet somebody on the street, is that somebody you're meeting on the street somebody different than you're making love to? And if so, why? What model is it in your head? Does it scare you to think that you'd walk down the street and you would look at everybody as your lover? Is that too much? Can you handle that one? To you, it's scary to you because you think of it in second chakra terms. Because you think, well, if it's my lover, that must mean I want to go to bed with him. That's in your model of lust of subject-object. But the lover in the sense of, here we are. Wow, here we are. Here we are. Here we are again. Wow, dig that. Here we are. Because if what I said is true, about that when you live in the fourth chakra, you are as high as you're going to be when you're at the moment of orgasm. Now think of walking down and getting on the 3rd Avenue bus in the moment of orgasm. And think of meeting the grocery store man in the moment of orgasm. And think of meeting the policeman in the moment of orgasm. And think of eating your breakfast in the middle of orgasm. And think of going to the toilet in the middle of orgasm. It's hard, isn't it? And the minute of that merging, unitive, all coming together, oneness of, right? And all I'm doing is walking down the street. That's the meaning of the term yoga. That's the ananda of Sat Chit Ananda. It's the absolute bliss, it's called. taking your own life just the way it is at this moment. How do you transform that? How do you transform it? How do you bring consciousness into it, into every nook and cranny of it? Now, in our Western doing way, we first usually think we ought to change our life. If you got a job, give it up. If you're at school, drop out. If you're not married, marry. If you're whatever it is, go to an ashram. Do something. Stop eating, start eating, eat this, eat that. Do this, do that. But as you've done all that after a while, so you rush and do it sometimes, and then you see that you bring with you all the stuff that you're trying to get rid of into each new external environment. Although each external environment may call forth different parts of where you are at. So that if you go up into the mountains and live alone, it will not arouse in you certain kinds of worldly desires that would be aroused were you sitting in the middle of New York City. But then you find when you come back to New York City, you have to face a lot of those anyway. All you did was push them out of sight. You didn't finish with them. So finally you get mature enough and wise enough to start with right where you are now. If you're a man with a job and a professional responsibility and a commitment, here I am. If you're a woman with children, here I am. If you're somebody who is working in service, here I am. If you're somebody who is drifting, here I am. If you're somebody that's an artist, here I am. If you're somebody that's... Start with where you are. And you start to bring to bear consciousness on every part of that life just the way it is now. With the understanding that as you bring consciousness to bear on every part of your life, that part of your life will change to come more into harmony with the Tao, more into harmony with the universe, with form, with all manifestation of form, without you doing anything. It's like I didn't have to stop seeing my old friends. It all just fell away. And it fell away because I wasn't the person I used to be. And there wasn't any reason for us to be together. And there was a feeling, there wasn't any ripping, there was just a dropping away. And the mature being realizes that growth is very much like the snake shedding its skin. The skin falls away, you don't rip it off. You don't have to say, goodbye, parents, I'm leaving, rip, I got to rip. That's only because you don't have enough faith. That you got to make some external waves in order to prove to yourself you're doing something. But actually, the process goes on just very gently within the field you're in right at the moment. Like you can work with the thought that any time you can say about anything in the universe, quote, that brings me down, the next line you should say is, well, that's my problem. Meaning that's a place in my head that I'm stuck in. That's why it brings me down. In the yoga, one of the methods is called contentment. That's not a goal, that's a method. Most people say, sure, well, when I'm finished, I'll be content. No, that isn't the game. The game is contentment, meaning it is just the way it is, just the way it is. This is the way it is, okay? Now, I can be content at this moment, and at the same moment, the next moment, I will move towards something else. Like I can be sitting here, and I'm here, and this is content. But in this body situation is the seeds of the fact that I'm going to do this. Because there is some tension in my body, because it's not in harmony, because certain muscles are being strained and so on. So I can sit here, and at the same moment there is that tension, and the next moment that tension is going to motivate me to do this. Still, when I am here, I am content. 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 Okay? Can you hear what I'm saying about that? So that even though you're going to change something the next minute, that doesn't mean you change it out of discontent. It changes because it changes. It changes because it changes. Now, it is under that basis that you do everything you do in yoga. You do it because you do it. But at each moment you are exactly where we are, which is content. And as you begin to calm down and hear and see more and understand more, you begin to feel the way in which your body and the way in which your breath affect your state of consciousness. And you begin to notice that very often your body brings you down. It's like if I wish to do a formal meditation and put my body in a certain position, like into a lotus position, and sit down and get myself perfectly balanced so that the weight is forward on my body, so it's sort of on the thighs and on the front of the rib cage, and I just sit down like this, I can at that point, my body can fit into the harmony of the universe in such a way through balance and so on that I don't have to think about my body anymore. My body won't keep demanding consciousness, saying, knee hurts, back's getting sore, leg going to sleep, sending all these messages which are saying, do something about me. And as you start to do that first exercise we did this morning, which is just bringing your mind to one-pointedness, and you see why your mind can't get to one-pointedness, you begin to feel that your body is sort of catching you somehow or other. And that the model of coming into some other harmony means getting something done with your body. And you begin to work on your body, on your diet, on your body movements, on your breath. Just because. You start to notice that when you eat certain foods, you feel certain ways. It's an old art. If you want to be on the second chakra, you eat aphrodisiacal foods. There are certain kinds of foods that are called rajasic foods in this Hindu system, meaning fiery foods like spices and meat and so on that are into more like first, second, and third chakra stuff. You eat first, second, and third chakra foods, you'll be first, second, and third chakra person. Because in some way you are what you eat until until you get to the level of consciousness where you can transmute. The minute you can transmute energy, you can take anything into your system and move it immediately up into the place it's got to be, to a higher center. But until you can do that, where it comes, what you take in has a ascending thing in it. It'll support some particular model or another. We're going to do an exercise during the noon meal of conscious eating. And then we'll be discussing food more in the afternoon. But now I'd like us to do something with pranayama, or breath. Now everybody moved out of some place or other into something or other, with some thought or other. Right? All you have to do is note that. I don't mean it's noted. Pranayama, which is the fourth of the 8 limbs of the yoga. We've been working with number 2 and number 1 primarily thus far. The fourth limb of the yoga is called pranayama, which means control of prana, or life force. And it's concerned with learning how to move prana, or energy, up your spine, get it up into the higher centers. When you really are doing pranayama, when I am into pranayama, in the formal sense, pranayama will take me into every state that I ever got into with LSD. Pranayama is the most powerful method that I use in terms of straight power. Although there were power mantras I use, which are just about as powerful, but this is extraordinarily powerful. What I'm going to share with you are the 3 basic breathing techniques to get the process going. You use them for 5-6 months until you get certain clues inside you. The effects of these breathing things are that your breath will become very, very calm all day long. Very gentle and calm. And if you're going to be able to develop a center so you can see how it is, you have to stay right here, calm. And you begin to see how your environment, your breath is your environment. That's one kind of an environment. And if you study a yogi, his breath is always so thin. My teacher can be running up a hill, and you listen to his breath, and I get up to the top of the hill, and his breath is absolutely. Now, besides calming the breath, these exercises in pranayama will simultaneously give you a feeling of lightness all day long. The third thing they will do, and this is very interesting because I thought of these as very trivial things until I started to see how they work. The pranayama is so powerful it starts to affect your diet very strongly. It starts to affect what you can eat when you're really doing pranayama. You got to really get into it, but that's the way it works. It also affects your blood, and it will start to sensitize you to certain nerves in your body. Here's how it works. Now, you may have learned breathing exercises in different ways. That's groovy. Do your own. These are not his versus mine. These are merely a set. There are many paths, and this is one traditional path of breathing. Breath is one of the ways to tune in on pran, that's all. Breath and pran are not necessarily the same. Pran is all energy. Breath is merely one of the corners of it. These three exercises, which are called Shitli, Bhastrika, and Narisodan, are to be done on an empty stomach, and they are to be done with, meaning no food for 3 hours and no liquid for an hour. When you are doing a total sadhana, that means you are doing nothing else but your sadhana, but your spiritual work, and everything in your life is designed around that. Then you are able to organize your life so that you could do the breathing 4 times a day at 6, 12, 6, and 12. If you're living in a cave, for example. Most people in the West, at the degree of intensity at which they do their sadhana, can perhaps do it twice a day, and the minimum, of course, is once a day. And perhaps the best time to do it is early in the morning. And if it's to be 2 times a day, it's early in the morning and the evening before you take your evening food, if you're going to take evening food. The head, neck, and chest are kept in a straight line. Now, these 3 breathing exercises are taught in 2 ways. One, they're taught in a very gentle way, and one, they're taught in a much more powerful way, which I started to teach this more powerful way, and then somebody came up to me and said, "You're not supposed to teach that to people. That's dangerous." So I immediately wrote to my teacher, and I said, "I'm not supposed to teach that. That's dangerous." And he wrote back and he says, "It's all right. So I'll teach it to you just the way I know it, because I have a feeling that the danger lies in the way in which it's invested, and I don't feel any danger in any of these. And I'll explain the one I do, which is the one beyond these, and what the dangers are connected with it. Since anything I know, you're welcome to know." Now, the secret or the power method of these is the closing of the mulbund. The mulbund is an opening, or it's a set of nerves you activate which tightens a set of muscles. And these muscles, you can experience them. They are 2 fingers width behind the genitals and 2 fingers width in front of the anus. There's a place, which is right down in here, where a series of nerves, it's like a nerve center, and when you pull back and in and up on that, it's like pulling back into the genitals, and when you go to the toilet, when you defecate, you tighten your sphincter afterwards, and it's that same feeling of tightening the sphincter and pulling back in on the genitals. Now, most people have learned through psychoanalysis in one form or another to let all that open. See, otherwise it's known in the culture as being tight-assed or some image like that. And now you're going to learn to close it and keep it closed. Right? And you will keep it closed during the entire 3 breathing exercises. Later on, you'll learn how to keep it closed all the time. So just it automatically stays closed. You just open it when you need to open it. You don't keep it open and close it when you need to close it. Now, at first, when you try to close it, you'll feel a vrrr and a tight, and you can't do it, and you forget, and that's all part of the course. It's all cool. Don't get uptight. It's sometimes helpful to take a little ball of cloth, like a kind of a bigger golf ball, made of cloth. Don't use a rock or anything like that. A piece of cloth, and stick it under there so that it presses up on those, and it helps those stay closed. Helps remind you, too, to keep them closed. And you can carry your little yoga kit, which includes your earplugs and your little ball of cloth and stuff like that, and your tube for washing out your nose. And then if you get more advanced, you have your long piece of cloth that you swallow when you bring out your rectum and you clean your intestines. Depends on how deep you want to get into the whole program. This is the first round of methodology, so we won't do any rectal cleaning today. So you try to keep the mulbun closed, and I'll try to remind you about it. And it doesn't matter where you're starting from. It doesn't matter anything about your age. It doesn't matter anything about your previous anything. It's just whether or not you're ready to do these kinds of things. I started yoga when I was 35, I guess, and I was like, I couldn't have sat in this position for more than 10 seconds without excruciating pain, right? And the, oh, God, ooh, you know that place? And now I just put my body there and leave it there. And that all happened within like 3 months. Of 3 months of just doing it. Just cut out all the, can I do it? Will I do it? Just do it. See, it's just simple as that. Just do it. But get comfortable. Don't just get so that your head, neck, and chest are in a straight line. You can sit in a chair. Doesn't matter. Whichever way you can do your thing most comfortably, so you can get your body cool. The mulbun closed. Now, this particular kind of breath control is all preparatory, and therefore it's all, in this case, it's all upper breathing. It is not lower breathing. You're not breathing down here. It's up in the chest, diaphragm. So there is another bund or opening called the Udian bund, which is right here. Now, in different kinds of things, you do different kinds of breathing. And it's not good and evil. It's just different kinds of breathing for different purposes. This particular type of breathing is upper breathing. You close the Udian bund as well. That's where you suck in on your gut just a little bit. Now you can notice that when you let out your air completely, you can suck way in the gut, and when you strengthen those muscles, your stomach starts to go in rather than out or straight. It goes way in under your chest cavity. But at the moment, you just pull it in just a little bit. So you've closed the mulbund and the Udian bund. And then this first one called Sheetli, you extend your tongue and make it into a U. Now, many people say, I can't do that. Statistics sometimes say that 70% of the population can do it and 30% can't do it. It's been a study of who can make their tongue into a U. See? However, most of the people that say they can't can. They just never have learned how to do it. So all you got to do is stand in front of a mirror and do all the things with your tongue you think you could do until it turns into a U, because there's a place that it turns into a U, but you don't know it, see, because you've never looked at it. So you get there and you get as close to it as you possibly. You extend your tongue quite far, create the U, then breathe the air. You breathe, this is a good thing to do facing the sun or facing the sun in your mind, and you breathe light force in through your tongue. And then you close your mouth and let it out your nose. And the breath is not forced and it's not shallow. It's deep, but not forced deep. Now, one more thing. While you're doing that, you keep your attention focused right here on your ajna. Okay? So that you bring in all this energy and you bring it as fast as you can right to this point. And when you're doing this properly, after you've done even 5 of them, you will feel a huge burning sensation right up here. You'll feel tremendous heat, and you will start to experience light in your forehead. Just from this breathing exercise, after you learn how to do it. Now, you do 5 of them the first time you do it. Then every time you do it, you add 1 more till you get up to 50. So we'll do 5 now. The next time you do it, you do 6, then 7, and so on up to 50. Then you do 50 each time. Right? Close mulbund, close Udian bund, head, neck, and chest in a straight line, in through the mouth, out through the nose, bringing all of the energy right to the place between your eyes. Okay. Do 5 of them. That is called Sheetli. The second of these is called Bhastrika. It is also known as the bellows. You will again close your Uddiyana Bund, keep as a little bit, keep your Mul Bund closed, the lower Bund closed. Bund means gate. The breathing again is upper chest, upper breathing. You will take short staccato breaths in through your nose, breathing in and out, hitting the in point and the out point as if with a trip hammer. It's as if tick, tut, 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 tut. The game is to keep the in-breath and the out-breath of equal duration and equal intensity. And go as fast as you can comfortably go, keeping those of equal duration and equal intensity. The body during this entire exercise is to be kept relaxed. The focus is on the inside of the tip of the nose. That is right inside where when you breathe, you'll feel air hit the nostrils right here. And when the air hits these nostrils, that's the place right there you focus on. And just put your attention there. You do this for 30 seconds, and you just estimate 30 seconds. Just feel your way through a clock for 30 seconds or however long, 30 seconds. And then at the end of that time, rest for a few moments and then do another 30 seconds. Evenly, calmly, but in and out trip hammer, like do it just at the rate you can do it. Or brrr, but fiercely. Don't be too gentle. Fiercely. Head, neck, and chest, straight line. Mul Bund closed. That one was called Bhastrika. The third one is called Nari Sodan. Nari Sodan is ultimately the most powerful of these three, although it appears to be the least, often at the beginning anyway. In this initial way of doing it, you take your third finger, place it on your forehead of your right hand, and then using your thumb on your right nostril and your fourth finger on your left nostril, you now control your two nostrils. Right. Your third finger is right on your ajna.